Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with NAMI. My name is Peg Morrison. I'll be your host for the evening. I am the Director of Programs with NAMI North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. I'm so glad you're here. Thursdays with NAMI is our way of building conversations and building community around the topic of mental health. Kind of our way of pushing back against the COVID pandemic, and it's grown into a series of conversations that we've really come to appreciate. One of the best things about working for NAMI is the people who reach out to us and want to help. As an example, this spring, I received an email from a group of 9 students at Eastern Carolina University. As honors students, they were asked to research a wicked problem and present the results. So naturally, they chose mental health. I was thrilled to hear that, specifically anxiety among high school students. They named their group AIDS for Anxiety. They interviewed experts around the state, possibly around the world. We'll find out shortly. And they're going to give us the whole scoop. Tonight, we've got Nancy Imoh and Kasey Perkins with us. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our guests. Partway through, we'll show a video of the week, and then we'll be taking questions from you, members of our virtual studio audience, live with Zoom and on Facebook. Now we're going to have a quick word from our funders. Thursdays with NAMI is funded in part by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services through the Federal Community Mental Health Block Grant Fund. I'm getting pretty good at that fast radio talk. We appreciate their guidance and support. All right, without any further ado, as I mentioned, our 2 guests are honor students with Eastern Carolina University. Nancy Imoh is an exercise physiology major with a concentration in medicine. Kasey Perkins is also an exercise physiology major. Her minor will be in psychology. Welcome, Kasey and Nancy.
Hello, thank you so much for having us again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, without any further ado, we always like to know the background of our guests. So tell us about yourselves in a nutshell.
So as Peg mentioned, I am Nancy, and I'm an exercise physiology major at East Carolina University. After I graduate, I plan on going to PA school, hopefully to specialize in sports medicine. And that is because I'm extremely passionate about healthy living, which is why I chose to be a part of AIDS for Anxiety as well. Mental well-being is just as important as physical well-being. And even in our society, which is increasingly progressive, it's still widely overlooked and still stigmatized. So I'm with AIDS for Anxiety to try and help change that.
All right, that's a great mission. And Kasey.
Hi there, everyone. So as mentioned earlier, I'm also an exercise physiology major. I plan on becoming a physical therapist. I'll attend graduate school after I finish my undergrad. I'm not sure exactly the setting or concentration I'd like to have, but definitely orthopedic, concussion rehab. Those are some of my main interests within the field and realm of physical therapy. And I also have a very strong connection and relationship to mental health. It's something that has been a major part of my life and a major part of my sister's life, who is one of the best people in the world. She's my rock in my world. And that is actually her career. So I've just been around it a lot. And I have a passion for everyone to value their mental health and to really recognize their emotions and to know when it's okay to seek help, because it's always okay to seek help. But just, trying to open up that conversation more and destigmatize that is just a passion of mine that hopefully, as Nancy mentioned, we can continue with in our society.
Well, that is great to hear. And that's a lot of what NAMI is about too, is stigma busting and just telling our stories. You kind of led into our next question, Kasey, a forward thinker that you are. Tell us about your connection to mental health. And I think you wanted to tell us a little bit about your story too.
Yeah, definitely. So mental health and anxiety and depression and all of that has really started for me probably my freshman year of high school. Middle school, it was never really just kind of something that was involved in my life, or I didn't really recognize it as much. So high school was when it really started to build its relationship with me. I was impacted by it and by my mental health in a lot of different ways. I had my personal struggles, where I was at the lowest of the low, and I had different realms and different categories that I was struggling with, within my mental health. I also played club volleyball, so having to deal with my mental health within a team setting and having to deal with other people's personalities and mental health as well was something that I had to learn about and try to figure out, and during that awkward and difficult stage of high school. Like I mentioned earlier, my sister's career and interest is involved in mental health. She specializes in addictions and eating disorders. So there's a lot of connection with the physical element of our lives, but also tying in that mental health aspect as well. And just family culture was a big thing as well, because mental health was not talked a lot about with my family. So trying to, know that I was going through something, but not really knowing how to communicate that was really hard for me. So there are a lot of different ways that I struggled with my mental health originally, but I've definitely found a lot of ways to overcome those struggles and to know that it's okay to not be okay. And it can impact you in very different ways at different points in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting. It came up last week as well. We had two women talking about their mental health experiences, and that theme of just not having the language to talk about what you're going through. It's a pretty big deal. And I know when I interviewed with all 9 of you in your group, some of you said, well, one of the reasons we chose this topic was our difficulties that we had as honor students, feeling that pressure and dealing with anxiety. Nancy, tell us about your connection.
So my connection to mental health and my mental shortcomings, I like to call them, have definitely went back a little bit further than high school. My parents always put so much like enormous pressure on us to succeed as students, as people in society. Rightfully so. I can't say that I'm mad at them for putting pressure on me, because look where I am today. But as a child and as someone who's 11 years old up into high school, it was just really hard for me to be motivated internally rather than be motivated by their want for me to do well. So a lot of my motivation was because my parents wanted me to succeed, or because I wanted to live up to my older sister's expectations, and just do as well as she was doing. So that really really connected. For me, it gave me this like perfectionist mindset. And that's where a lot of my anxiety started to come up. And then going into high school, I went to an early college high school as well as a health science based high school. And so there was that added pressure of, needing to know what you want to do at such an early age. In college is when a lot of people find themselves. But for us, it was, at 14 years old, what do you want to do with your life? And that was not really something that was on my mind, but it was on a lot of my friends' minds. And, they all knew from the get-go what they wanted to do. And I just wasn't the same way. So, just that pressure to succeed and that pressure to do well made me a very anxious person. And I still am today. And I'm still trying to, break through those perfectionist tendencies. And to, I've gotten a lot better at it, at, doing what I want to do for me and, focusing on what I'm passionate about for me, not for anyone else. But yeah, that's definitely something that I'm still working on today.
Yeah, I think a lot of us relate to that as well with the perfectionism. It's a double-sided coin, right? Because on the one hand, you can sink your teeth into something and have it, you can really master whatever you approach. But on the other hand, you feel like you're never done, or you have these very high standards that are painful.
Yeah.
Were there, we'll start with Nancy this time. Were there any other reasons why your group chose anxiety and mental health?
I think a lot of us went through what I went through. My story is unique in some ways, but I just know a lot of us, as all 9 people coming together, we knew like we just came out of high school. We're like, we know what these kids are going through, and not only is there so much anxiety that we're looking at and that we face and that our friends face and things like that, but we knew there's not enough resources to help fix it and to help people know how to cope with what they're dealing with. and what they're going through, because it's okay, like Kasey said, it's okay not to be okay, but what do we do about it? What's the next steps? How do we get better? How do we fix that? And we were like, there's not enough resources to help people figure out how to fix it, and if there are, we don't know about them as high school students. So we just want to get the word out there and show people that it's okay not to be okay, and here's what you do about not being okay.
Right. Well, that's very well said. Are you hearing an echo? I'm hearing a little echo with my audio.
Hold on, my sister's in another room, maybe that's it.
Oh, try. Can you hear me now? Is that better or worse?
That sounds better.
Okay, perfect. I really love your statement, Nancy, because I think we focus on so many things that we teach our children and we talk about in our community. We know what to do when we have a cold or a flu. We know what to do in so many situations. Mental health, it affects everybody on some level, and 1 out of 5 very intensely. Go ahead, Kasey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like you just said, somebody has a cold and we have a direct treatment for it, and you know exactly what to do. But when someone says that they're anxious or they're depressed, it kind of, is kind of up in the air about what should we do? What's the best resource? And, everyone is going to be different with what works for them and what resources are best. But just opening up, that conversation and trying to find those resources or knowing what's available, I think is really important. And it's also just really hard, with the population that we chose with high schoolers, because a lot is still out of their control. So it was definitely interesting to try to take on something that, we experience, but you also have to, deal with that minor adolescent issue as well, where like not everything is in their control. So what are they able to do with the situation or the position that they're in as well?
Right. And so that leads into our next question. Again, you interviewed a number of nonprofits, including NAMI. In your quest for answers, tell me about what they had to say and what you learned.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of our big interviews actually shocked us with what we learned. It was just, they all took a very different turn or a different approach than what we had all anticipated, but in the best way possible, because we just learned things that we were really not expecting. I would say one of the biggest things that we learned was it was so hard for teens to find the right information for them. Even in our initial research that we were doing before we conducted a lot of our interviews, every time we would try to search up, help for anxious teens or something simple like that in Google, it was all resources for parents. And it was parents, here are things that you can do to help with your anxious child. And of course, those resources are needed, but it was just interesting because there wasn't a lot out there that was specifically for teens in that direct population that they could use. And another thing that we also realized was there was a lack of communication and resources for the parent and the child. It seemed like the two were almost independent. And with the interviews that we conducted, a lot was like, here's what we tell parents, here's what we tell kids. It was not a lot of what can they do together. So that was also really interesting, because support when it comes to mental health is huge. Your support system is I think one of the most important parts of when you're trying to better your mental health. So it was just really interesting that the two weren't really connected. They were kind of separated. And the last thing that I'll say is when we talked to a lot of the high schools and student services in North Carolina that we interviewed, a lot of them said, or were talking about how they found it hard to communicate with the students because they could tell that students weren't utilizing resources that they provided, but they couldn't figure out if it was the way they were being offered or if it was the problems that they were specifically addressing. It was really hard for the student service programs to figure out what was going on for the kids. So that was also just really interesting, because there's so many different parts. And again, communication is like one of the biggest things here. But those were probably some of the biggest takeaways that we learned from our interviews with various high schools and organizations.
That is really interesting. I hadn't thought about how things are so segmented, this for parents, that for kids, but it does seem like things fall into those categories. And at NAMI, we do our flagship course, Family to Family, is considered an evidence-based practice because that family support is so important. And they actually did long-term studies and found that people with mental illness did better, surprise, surprise, when the people in their life understood what, had some literacy about mental health and knew how to be supportive and communicate in a way that de-escalates and shows empathy. Nancy, do you have any follow-up? I think that was an excellent summary, Kasey. Maybe Nancy's, anything else you want to add?
I just want to say that also a lot of the people, we also interviewed the Boys and Girls Club, which is one of our key partners as well in this journey that we're going through. But I think another thing with the people we interviewed is just that a lot of people want to help. And so that was really reassuring for me, is just that like everybody we reached out to was so receptive to our solution, which I'll go into in a minute, and with our project, and they were so happy that students like us were taking the initiative and trying to move forward with getting help for people who do need help, who are our age and in our age group, which also made me think a little bit like, why is this still a wicked problem? If so many people want to help, so many people want to do things, why hasn't real change been made yet? So that's just something that I think about still.
Yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely. And tell me about the outcome of your project.
Right. So our outcome. Okay, so I kind of want to go into a little bit of our project before I answer what our outcome was. So originally we went into this honors class, with the idea of mental health and anxiety. And so our solution for our wicked problem of escalated anxiety in high school students was to go into schools and give presentations to students about different, not so much different stresses that they may face because they know the stresses that they're facing, but more, how to cope with it and how to manage it, because we all know, anxiety is going to happen. As the semester went on and toward the end of the semester, actually, we pivoted a little bit. And instead of giving presentations, we switched to a seminar style discussion so that, the people who we are talking to, we can get to know them a little bit better, connect more, and, make a free and open environment for us to discuss something that may be difficult for some people to discuss. So we have like a seminar style where there's one person kind of leading the discussion, but it's really open just for people to talk about what they need and to really share their experiences, which I also think can be helpful. We have this for students, or the plan is to have this for students and for parents, and then some for both. Like we were saying, it's really segmented, but we really want to bring those two parties together and, like, here's what we're going through, here's why, and here's how to solve it together. Let's do it together. So as far as our outcome, we were one of 14 groups to move on to the next class, which would be Honors 4500. So our project was selected to move forward and to move into the process of becoming a signature honors project, which we are very excited about. And so we just plan on continuing where we are with this seminar style discussion kind of thing that we have going on. And the next steps are to really get on the implementation process and, really get out there. And we're going to start with the Boys and Girls Club because getting into schools was a little difficult for us as well. But, we really just want to take it and run with it and see where it goes and develop more. There's a lot more to come.
Well, that is very exciting. And I appreciate that summary. I really like the way you captured all the angles and all the steps along the way to the process. And so there were 14 teams. How many were chosen as final projects?
Oh, wait, no, there was, I think there was 33 teams and we were one of 14 that were chosen.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, so they
cream of the crop.
Yeah, they cut it in about half and we were chosen. So, and also we think that's a really big accomplishment because going into the project, we were told by our honors professors that like not many mental health groups make it this far. And there's not many mental health groups who, have a project sustainable enough to move on to the last step, which is Honors 4500. So we're really excited about that.
Well, congratulations, both of you. That's good stuff. And I think it probably helped that you were so specific. AIDS for anxiety, you had an age group that you were targeting and a particular type of mental health struggle. Kasey, would you like to add anything?
I think Nancy did a great job summing everything up. So props to Nancy for that.
Thank you.
But yeah, it was definitely a very interesting process. It was something, that I think was just interesting for us 9 that were involved with it, because it's something that, none of us were expecting. The 2 classes that we took to develop this project were just entirely different than I think what we had anticipated, but in the best ways possible. So it was great to watch this development of a project, and to know that we're really helping a population. And like Nancy said, to see a lot of people being really receptive to what we were trying to do. But it was also amazing to just watch the 9 of us grow, build friendships, and just continue to build our strengths and conquer our weaknesses, because that was something we definitely had to do with this class.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a beautiful process, and I'm so glad that both of you are willing to come and share your experience with us and your time. I know, you're just out of being slammed with finals, and I'm sure there are many things on your plate. So thank you for being here with us today.
Absolutely. No place I'd rather be.
Me too.
All right.
This is great.
That makes our day here. So we'll start with Kasey. What is the status of, you kind of covered this, the status of AIDS for Anxiety today. Maybe you could talk about the social media outreach you've been doing.
Yeah, definitely. So since we got the invitation to make this our signature honors project, after discussing as a team where everyone's passions were, and some people have other majors and other research interests. So there are going to be 3 out of the 9 of us that are going to move forward with this project. So with us using this as our signature honors project, it's going to be something that we're going to be working on for the next 1 to 2 years. We do have a ECU psychology faculty mentor that we're going to be working with. And what we're hoping to do is she has a field experience course that she teaches where other undergraduate students can get experience in some way related to psychology out in the real world. And then they do reflections on that through her course. So that's how we plan to integrate our project and hopefully continue it past once we finish it for the research. And so yeah, so hopefully it's something that can continue to grow and develop even once we are done with our part for it. But that is really exciting to us as well, that we have a faculty mentor that we can work with. And our social media is what we are currently using as our main form of communication. We do have a website, and I can put the link into the chat. It is still in the development stages, so some parts are not fully the way we want them yet, but that is something that we're going to work on this summer, is really updating and adding to that. But our social media pages, and I can put our Instagram on there as well, are what we're going to use for basic polls, motivation. We want to make sure that we're talking about what our audience wants to hear about. So hopefully we can really reach out to high school students and high school parents to figure out, what they're interested in, what we need to present to them to try to make life just a little bit easier.
Okay. And I see a lovely comment from Gary Kreitz, our executive director, in the box, the chat box. I don't think I was as insightful and eloquent as these panelists, even when I was in grad school. So I was having a similar thought. You're very well spoken and passionate, both of you. Nancy, do you have any follow-up thoughts about where AIDS for Anxiety is today?
I think Kasey summed it up pretty well as far as where we are. I just really want to emphasize that we are still in kind of the development stages as far as our presence online and like in the world, apart from what we have developed intimately with our group. So really just stay tuned, and we're on the move.
Well, that's good. So you're building a foundation, and you'll have some sustainability built in because you'll have a class that will keep it moving in future years. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. And just checking the chat box here, a lot of good stuff coming up in the chat box if you would like to check out our resources, virtual studio audience members. Okay, so most of us have had dark times in our lives, and this would go to Nancy first. How would you describe your dark days?
Okay, so a lot of my dark days, like I said, is really integrated and really, hand in hand with a lot of the school that I do. I'm very passionate about my education and getting a good education because my parents worked so hard. We're immigrants from Nigeria, so I was born there and we moved here when I was young. So education is something that we are extremely passionate about in my family because, it's something that's not as valued in other countries. So I really try hard for everyone and for myself now to, do the best that I can in my education and, you know, moving forward, just so that I can give back to my society and give back to all the people who have helped me be where I am today. So a lot of my dark days come when I feel like I'm falling short of that goal. And, you know, I just finished an organic chemistry class, and it was the bane of my existence. Like it was terrible in all aspects, but you know, we made it through. And so a lot of my times come during the semester. And when I just feel like I can't keep going, and when I feel like, you know, that anxiety, that perfectionist mindset takes over, and, you know, that's the only thing that's driving me, and that's the only thing that I can think about. So those are what my dark days look like.
Right. And everyone I know who has ever taken an organic chemistry class has hated it.
I know. Everyone except my older sister. She loved it. And I'm like, I don't know how you did it, but good for you.
Well, there's one in every crowd.
Yeah.
Kasey.
Yeah. So I think my when I was at, you know, the lowest of my lows and on my dark days, I really struggled with feeling alone. I'm that person that I take on people's problems. I always try to fix any kind of problem or situation that comes up. And so I always try to keep a high status for myself, and I don't, you know, reflect what's going on internally. So a lot of people thought I was doing okay, thought I was this really, you know, kind of bubbly person, because I just have a hard time opening up and showing the real me sometimes. And so, you know, I felt like I almost didn't have anyone to go to, because I just didn't know how to communicate for a long time. And you know, it was almost that concern of like, why aren't my friends, you know, concerned about me? But it's because I never displayed anything that would make them concerned for me. So that was something that I really struggled with. And just feeling, I definitely got to points where, you know, you almost can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So just how do you even try to approach, you know, a feeling like that at such a young age? It was just something that was really challenging for me. I also struggle with those perfectionist tendencies as well. And another big problem of mine is I overthink everything. So I will take the easiest task ever, like writing an email is terrifying for me, because it takes like 30 minutes. It's a process. And I've definitely gotten a lot better at it over the school year, because I've had to learn how to prioritize and, you know, not worry over little things. And it's something I will probably have to work on for the rest of my life. But that was also a really big struggle for me, you know, during my dark times, was trying to overthink every little thing that was happening in every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something a lot of young women, and probably all women, struggle with, is somehow putting our own needs on the table, and making space for our own needs and opening that communication door. We're very focused on maintaining a certain front and focusing on other people. So yeah. And Nancy, it was so interesting to hear you talk about the pressure that you felt, and as the daughter of immigrants, how I could see that compounding the pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So like I said, you know, my education has really been, and I think it's because, so for my parents, you know, coming here and, you know, building a new life basically from scratch at such, you know, such a young age. And then for me, it's kind of like they have that foundation. They've already set that foundation, and there's nothing that I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about paying the bills. You know, I don't have to worry about putting food on the table. That's all them. So the only thing I really do have to focus on is my education. And so sometimes I get in my mind, like, if I'm not doing that well, then what am I here for? You know what I mean? Like, this is the only thing that I have to, you know, and put my entire, like, put everything behind is my education, because that's the only thing I'm really doing right now. So I just try to do it the best as I can. And sometimes, you know, my best is not enough. And that's really, that can be really, you know, get me down sometimes. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to overstep, but if I were to venture a guess, I'd say your best probably is good enough.
I appreciate that.
99% of the time, just going out on a limb there, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. And so how did you all and maybe you've touched on this, but you probably have some more insights because I can tell you both have a lot of them. How did you come out of those dark days? What lifted you up?
Okay, so I could go first on this one. So I know it's really a kind of a cliche, you know, a lot of the things that even we sometimes promote is that, you know, like meditation and exercise, those things are really good for getting someone up. But mine is actually really exercise. Like I can't stress it enough. The reason I chose exercise physiology, the reason I chose to be in sports med, you know, it's the reason I started playing sports in the first place. It's just because that is really what kept me going. That in the darkest times, I play soccer, so I can really just go outside and, you know, kick a ball around and release my frustration in that way. And although it doesn't completely, you know, help cure the problem at hand, even though sometimes it did, but, you know, it just relieved a lot of that frustration that I was feeling and helped me get back in the mind, like, okay, I can do this. And, you know, let's look at the problem now and let's look at how to fix it. So mine is really exercise and adopting new sports. Like I said, I play soccer, so that's really been something that has helped me a lot personally. And so I advocate for it all the time. I advocate for healthy living, like it's my job, because it will be one day. But yeah, that's really how I cope with my dark days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that mind-body connection for sure. Kasey.
Yeah, so I would say that my probably biggest thing that lifted me up was therapy. Therapy was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of my life when I first started. I will never forget my first session when I just flat out asked her, the first appointment, I was like, can we keep a trash can near me in case, you know, I start to feel sick, because I was just so incredibly nervous. I had no idea what to expect. I just felt so out of place because I felt like I was so young to be having these issues, which come to find out, I wasn't. And there are so many that have similar issues to what I was experiencing. But therapy changed my life. It definitely will take some time and some experimenting with the therapist that you do meet with, just finding the right one that connects with you. And luckily for me, I found a therapist who I feel like she had the exact same like childhood and background that I did. So anything that related on like a family matter or a culture like kind of status, she could relate to, just because she experienced the same thing. So it definitely is very nerve-wracking. And like I said, it can take some time to find that right person, but it is so worth it in the long run when you can learn how to communicate those feelings, because you learn to communicate not just with them, but it allows you to be more open to the people that are in your life. So that was something that was really beneficial for me. And I would say also just finding that right support group. I think that's one of the hardest things to do in high school, because you are in this very like specific environment and you're around the same people all the time. So it feels like you almost can't branch out, or that you have to meet these expectations with the people that you go to school with, because that's all you're around. So I definitely struggled with that, because I always felt like I needed to impress these people, or I needed to just act a certain way so I could fit in. But finding people who have similar interests and who have similar goals in life, which can be hard to do at that age, but just trying to find people who are going to make you better and not bring you down, I think is one of the best things that you can do at any age, but high school especially.
Mm. Yeah, I see someone commenting in the chat box. That's a great way to put it, in a specific group, and it can be hard to branch out. I love your comments. I love your way of summarizing that. And I think therapy, and for me, medication was hard to come to terms with. I need this, but it's so worth it. So I always encourage people who think you might need help in that direction, go ahead, give it a try. You know, no harm in trying that. Okay. So what gives your mental health a boost these days? I feel like you both covered that. Would you like to add anything?
I'm good, I think.
I would say I don't know if this might be helpful for anyone, but I think like the biggest boost for me, and it's something that it's the number one thing that I talk about with my therapist, is we talk about life as being a pie, and you have pieces of the pie, which are the different parts of your life. So it can be school, it can be job, family, a romantic relationship, and finding the balance between those. That's one of my biggest struggles. Is I typically have huge pieces of the pie for school and for work, and my pie for my friends is about this big, or the piece of the pie for myself is about this big. So learning how to, and it comes with time management and prioritizing as well, but making sure that you're balancing the different areas of your life, and finding those outlets that allow you to relieve some stress or to get away from what is causing you maybe some anxiety or some really intense emotions, and just being able to step away from that and knowing what will make you happy.
Yeah, and to add on to what Kasey said, actually, another thing that I do a lot is cry and just, kind of let those emotions out. Like, I feel strong emotions all the time. I'm just I'm just the kind of person who feels strongly for a lot of things. I get very passionate. I get pretty angry at some times, and I can get really sad as well. And I really try hard to not let those emotions stay inside and to be bottled up to the point where I am extremely anxious, or when I do get extremely down in those times, and I just cry. Sometimes just letting it out and just letting it go, let it go, let it go. And then you can come back and you can refocus once you're done, and you can say, all right, that was nice, and now like, how do we fix it now? You know what I'm saying? Let's not get back to a place where we have to do that. But yeah, advocate for crying.
Yeah, I love that. Whatever it takes to discharge that negative
Sure.
emotion is going to be worth it. And I feel the need to put in a plug for ice cream and frozen yogurt at this point as well. All right. So both of you are exercise physiology majors, which again brought to mind for me the mind-body connection. Interesting factoid, according to Harvard Health Publishing, exercise for many people is an effective treatment for depression. Not all, but for the less severe cases. What else should people know about that link between physical and mental health?
Kasey, do you want to go first, or I could?
Yeah, I can take that one first. So I think, it's something that you definitely have to experience and kind of see for yourself when you're at that low point, and maybe a low point physically as well, but then seeing when you're at a high point physically and how that can affect your mental health at that point. And so something that I really see with that is, I'm currently doing an internship at a physical therapy clinic. And so the individuals, who do their exercises that we give them, or just are trying to be have an active lifestyle, they are feeling a lot better. Their rehabilitation time is practically cut in half to people who might not have as great of an attitude, or might be like, oh, these exercises are a task, they're a chore, they're not as productive, and they don't get better as fast. And it also is a self-esteem there's a self-esteem aspect to it as well, because you can tell that they don't value themselves as they should, because they're just not moving like they should. So that's something that I advocate for a lot. Is you might not feel great doing you might not feel great in the moment when you're doing the physical activity, but it is going to make you a lot happier, and in the long run it's going to lead to a healthier lifestyle, and healthier lifestyles are going to help get your mental health in the right direction as well.
Well, that's interesting how their approach to exercise or treatment might reflect their self-esteem. So when you push yourself to do it anyways, you can maybe fake it till you make it a little bit.
Yes, it's almost like tricking the brain. And I know that there are some studies about rehabilitation and exercises in that regards. But it's also just something, hopefully as a professional one day I can look at it, because it is interesting just to see the correlation between self-esteem and self-worth with the amount of exercise that someone is doing.
Interesting. Nancy, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Kasey kind of focused a little bit on like the real world aspect of it, whereas my understanding between, the physical and mental health is largely scientific, because I've taken quite a few anatomy classes. And so what I've learned in those is that there are different hormones that are released when you do exercise versus when you're stressed. So when you're stressed, there is a hormone release called cortisol. And that is basically what puts you into your fight or flight kind of survival mode. And your brain ignores everything else that's not fight or flight. So it literally, it ignores, the need for food, the need for sleep, and things like that. And you are just stuck in that survival mode. So when people do have, when they're not mentally healthy, when they do have those, are in those high states of anxiety, and when they're in those high states of, arousal and things like that, they're stuck in that fight or flight zone and they can't do anything else. Then they're not sleeping well, they're not eating well, and that takes a toll on the physical. So there is strong scientific correlation between physical and mental health, which is why it's so important to prioritize your mental health. And I don't think a lot of people, realize that they're not prioritizing their mental health as much as they should.
All right, so two excellent perspectives, the sort of neurological view and the real world view. That's a wonderful pairing. I think you two are very complimentary of one another in your styles and your communication. You're delightful, actually, as guests. What else do you think people should know? Or circling back to anxiety, which is the AIDS for Anxiety topic, of course, what do you think people should know about young people and anxiety that they don't seem to know?
So one of the things that I really see with people who kind of stigmatize anxiety or stigmatize mental health is that they kind of dismiss it. And a lot of young people's feelings are dismissed because, our brains are not fully developed, or, we're over exaggerating, we're being dramatic, we want attention. And that is such a negative place to put in, because when you're told that as someone who is feeling these feelings, you feel less than. And you feel like, what you're feeling doesn't matter, and then you bottle it up. And that's what leads to, these states of depression or states of super high anxiety and things like that, because, they're being dismissed. And I feel like that is something that we as a whole society need to, stop, is to validate people's feelings and to validate, like, I get that I might not get personally why you're feeling this way, but I get that you are feeling this way, and I'm going to try to help you in that way. So I feel like that is something that people don't really see with young people and their anxiety or their mental struggles.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I definitely want to build on that, because I think a huge issue is the validation and comparison when it comes to adolescent anxiety. There is always this, and I know I've experienced this a countless amount of times in high school, where I would say, oh, I'm struggling with this, and somebody would say, oh, well, I have this. It's almost like my struggles weren't good enough for some people. And everyone is different. Everyone's going to have different issues, and that's okay, because everyone's going to have a different story and a different journey with their mental health. So I think learning or trying to teach that lesson to everyone and validate what someone is feeling, because everyone's going to have a stronger feeling with other topics, but just not trying to play that comparison game or say that my struggle is worse than yours, because that's only going to make that adolescent or that young adult less likely to open up, less likely to get help, and put them in unfortunately a worse situation.
Yeah. Again, really good points. We have a group guideline set for NAMI support groups, and one of them says, we won't judge anyone's pain as less than our own. And it's just so important. Everyone's path is different. Everyone's experience is different. And our feelings are valid. We have different nervous systems. We have different variables and different life experiences. So it's unfair to compare and not helpful.
Yes, it does no good.
Yeah. All right. Well, what gives you hope? I think you all give me hope. What gives you hope?
I know that for me, what gives me hope is talking to people, as much as sometimes I don't feel like doing it, trying to hear other people's stories and know that someone out there is struggling with something similar to what I am, or someone out there is just struggling in general, and I'm not alone in that feeling. That is really comforting to me. And just seeing people learn and grow in their mental health journey is also just inspiring for me, because watching someone else grow makes me want to do it, just because I'm trying to keep up with that person. But that it just inspires me to try to work on myself more, or work on my journey more, when I can see that someone is putting the time and energy into it and opening up about that.
For sure. And for me, I feel like it's just, I have seen a lot of, in our generation, just a lot of more openness in general, whether it be about mental health or other topics or issues. But I know, like, I'll get on TikTok and I will see, someone talking about their mental journey, their mental health journey, or how they're dealing with it and things like that, their low points, just testimonies and advocates of how people have gotten out of that. And seeing that on a social media platform that's so like popular right now with my generation is extremely inspiring. And that definitely gives me hope. And just people being more open, really. I know I think it was our first class in Honors 2000, Kasey, and our honors professor literally told us, like, she was very open with us. She was like, yeah, I go to therapy, and things like that. Like, I go to therapy, and like everybody should go to therapy. I think therapy's great and things like that. I had never heard that from a teacher before, or from anyone, just like being that open about prioritizing mental health. It's not something that I'd seen so much before, and I see it so much now, and it's really reassuring. And then, of course, groups like ours, I know we're not the only student group or students our age who are passionate about mental health and who are passionate about making things better for other people. So that's also keeps me hopeful.
Yeah, my perception is that your generation is ahead of where we used to be, with just mental health literacy, emotional intelligence, talking about feelings. And those are all such healthy things. Those are wonderful benchmarks, I think. So we are going to shift gears just a little bit now, wrapping up the interview portion of the show. Before we move on to our video of the week, I want to give a big shout out to the people who are there helping us behind the scenes. Psychiatric nurse Gail Pruitt is zipping back and forth from Facebook Live to Zoom, making sure that we're connected with our Facebook viewers. And Executive Director Gary Kreitz has been helping out on the chat box, and he's both of them are here with us just about every week. So we appreciate that support so much. And of course, thanks to our guests, Kasey and Nancy, for being here with us. For our video of the week, as long as we're on the topic of mental health in young folks, I found this quite refreshing. It's from a leading British charity, which fights for children and young people's mental health. A really unique video here. I hope you like it as much as I did.
So, because you're all on edge all the time, do you always think that someone's going to attack you or something?
What's the most awkward thing someone has asked you about your anxiety?
Once I was like shaking and fidgeting, and then someone asked if I was cold and I needed a coat. That was pretty awkward because I was absolutely fine.
This guy asked me why I looked so terrified, and I said I have anxiety. And he turned around and said, "Boo." And I looked at him in disbelief.
What does it feel like to have anxiety?
Having anxiety can be very debilitating.
It can kind of feel quite crushing.
It feels lonely. It feels like everyone else is just coping and you're not.
How do you manage your anxiety?
Make sure I'm doing positive things.
Physical exercise.
I learned a lot of yoga and mindfulness techniques.
Keep myself busy, keep myself occupied.
Time out is a very important one when you've got anxiety.
Reevaluate everything and how I'm feeling.
Talking. That's my thing for everyone, just talking to somebody. Like, there's so many different facts that support the idea of you not being alone, and it's true, you're not alone. Odds are there's somebody in your friendship circle that has anxiety or depression that can reason with you, that can help you.
Okay. I thought that was kind of different, kind of neat.
It's a great video and very relatable, because
Yes.
the girl that said she had someone ask if she was cold because she was shaking so much, that has happened to me on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Well.
Yeah, I watched it and thought, oh, they're just like our guests. These teens over in the UK. So wonderful thing. And now, virtual studio audience members, it's time for us to take your questions. If you can type them into the Q&A, which is just at the bottom left of your screen. Type that in. Your questions will magically appear to us, and they will be answered by Nancy and Kasey. So we've got 4 in the line already. Okay. So excellent information on observations from interviews. Was there a peer support presence in the school system? This question comes from the Fort Bragg Employee Assistance Program. I know that's a NAMI member. Thank you, Lisa, for being there. So was there a peer support presence in the system? And peer support, for those who don't know, is someone who has a mental health challenge who's been trained to help other folks deal with their mental wellness.
So you mean like within our group or like in our, so I don't think that there was peer support presence, but I mean, that's an amazing thing. Someone our age who's trained and, you know, ready to help someone who may be struggling as well. That's something that, you know, maybe we think about putting it in and advocating for that more with AIDS for Anxiety as well.
Okay.
Yeah, there were no, I know for like the high schools that we had interviewed, there were no like student organizations or anything like that, that was brought to our attention, at least, that kind of had a focus of mental health or mental well-being. There were definitely some growing yoga and meditation groups, I know, with some schools in more urban areas across the state of North Carolina. But again, there wasn't really a huge focus that we were made aware of on mental well-being or anxiety, depression, any of those, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know once in a while we'll get a high school student call NAMI and ask for support with a group, and we'll do what we can, but we're trying to build that up even further. Traditionally, we were focused on adult mental health, but we're trying to come up with a better foundation. That's one of the reasons I was so excited to hear from your group. So thank you for that question. I think it was from Lisa. Either way, thank you. And next question, I love to see this inclusion with high schoolers. I'm wondering if you noticed any gender-specific anxiety.
We definitely saw some gender-specific anxiety, I would say. It's interesting because there was a lot of overlaps in the topics that might be presented between different genders, but there was also their own differences as well. So for instance, body image and appearance was a very common anxiety or stressor for adolescents, but it's interesting just because a lot of males tend to have this, you know, I need to go to the gym all the time, I need to be in multiple sports, and have this physique that looks a certain way, whereas with females, we typically saw I need to have a very, you know, I need to have makeup on, I need to be super skinny, you know. It's interesting because, and I've talked a lot about this, I feel like, with coworkers and family members. It's interesting because I feel like young high school girls are considering that drinking just a Dunkin' Donuts coffee in the morning and then not eating for the rest of the day is healthy. And they consider that to be like a great thing that they can advocate for themselves. So there's definitely some crazy expectations out there, but we definitely did notice that there were some gender-specific anxieties when we were conducting our interviews and research.
And Kasey, I'm glad you brought that up with the whole coffee in the morning thing, because I feel like that also spills over to some colleges and universities. I've heard that people will not eat before they go out, like a night on the town or things like that, so they can fit in their clothes well, and they think that that's, you know, that's okay, and it's really not. Like those are unhealthy eating habits that can turn into something way more serious than it is.
Yes, that kind of breaks my heart, actually, that someone so young would feel the need to do that. Yeah, unfortunate, but we've got role models here on tonight's show saying it doesn't have to be that way. You can take a healthier approach.
Eat breakfast, please. I know so many high schoolers that don't eat breakfast. It's good for you.
I love that. We're going to make a PSA out of that clip. Eat breakfast, please. All right, next question. Is there a difference between anxiety in junior high, high school, or college?
Yeah, so I think that there definitely 100% is. even within high school itself, our presentations that we wanted to tailor to the high schoolers were split up between, you know, underclassmen and upperclassmen, just because we know for a fact that someone in 9th grade is not going to be struggling with the same thing that someone in 12th grade is, or a senior. You know, people in 9th grade, maybe it's social anxiety and getting used to your new environment, and, you know, meeting new people. You know, you're fresh out of middle school and things like that, maturing a little bit, whereas someone in their senior year is more focused on the different colleges and scholarships and test taking and things like that they're going to focus on. So just from that separation right there, there's 100% a difference between anxiety in junior high, high school, and, well, maybe between high school and college, it's a bit similar, just because you know, we're still in that environment of going to school and we've matured a little bit more, but school is still stressful. School is always going to be, you know, hard for some people. So I think that it may be more similar between high schoolers and college students, but definitely between junior high and high school students, and then within high school.
Yeah, and to build off of that, I feel like one thing we were told a lot, especially with like school counselors that we spoke with, they said they've noticed how freshmen or 9th graders in high school tend to just not know how to communicate. And we had a lot of counselors say that they would ask freshmen, you know, how are you feeling today? And they could not answer it because they just don't know how to describe what they're feeling. So it would be interesting to kind of learn more about what anxiety might look like in junior high or that middle school age, just because we weren't really familiar with it since it wasn't our focus population. But there definitely does seem to be at least a communication barrier with that anxiety and what those adolescents might be experiencing, because once they did get to high school, which was the group that we were working with, they weren't able to communicate it well to the people who were trying to help. And I would say to build off of the connection with anxiety in high school and in college, I think a lot of the social anxiety can go down just because since you are open to a larger, or you're exposed to a larger group of people and you can find that right set of friends and the right people to be around, it's a little bit easier in college. So you don't have to live up to any crazy expectations, or you're not forced to be with the same people if you don't want to be, just because you get past that point. But definitely with academics, that anxiety is still there. Just might feel different or look different for a lot of kids. And I know that especially with like studying, that's a big difference, because it's a lot different how you study for high school when, you know, you might have a test every 2-3 weeks. And then in college, you have a final and a midterm and a final, and that's it. That's worth majority of your grade. So it's like, how do you make that transition? And still, you know, keep your mental health, your social life up to par.
Mm-hmm. Did you get a sense that COVID-19 and the isolation, the being home more, did you get a sense that some anxiety was coming from that?
I feel like in some cases, yes, but in also some cases, no, because, you know, some students who did suffer from anxiety already or were in that high school setting that's really fast paced and, you know, like go, do these sports, be in these clubs, get these grades and things like that, apply for this college. It kind of stopped. It kind of slowed down. There were no expectations to, you know, go out and be social. So you can really just, you know, come back and rejuvenate really. And it was really a time for just like some relaxation, some getting back to your mental, you know, zen kind of place. Whereas with some other people, it was, you know, I'm missing my friends, you know, like I don't know what to do when I'm by myself kind of a thing. And extroverts who live off of that kind of, you know, fast paced life, really didn't get that anymore. There was nothing to get from that. So I can definitely see how it would be different depending on the person.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. And I know that another big thing that was brought to our attention with the shift to virtual learning due to COVID was a lot of kids who typically do well in school were doing dramatically worse.
Yes.
They were not able to keep up with the online switch, and they just really struggled. And a lot of it seemed like it was, again, a communication, and I hate to say maturity, but almost that was like the sense that we were getting. But that was a huge thing that we learned from COVID, was a lot of kids just did not handle the change to virtual learning very well. And it's dramatically impacting their grades. And there was one school that we spoke with, and they said that essentially they're going to have 2 freshman classes next year when things hopefully go back to normal, because so many of their freshmen this year have failed all of their classes, that they're just going to have to retake all of them again for their GPA and for their requirements.
Wow. Wow, that's a heavy load. So that's a lot. Another follow-up question on COVID. Do you see how parents' anxiety over the pandemic and their kids' education and isolation affects the stress the students are feeling? So is the parents' COVID stress filtering down to the kids?
It definitely is. We did a lot of our research and our interviews with schools in Greenville and in Greenville, North Carolina. And there are some parts of Greenville, North Carolina that are low income households and low income or lowly funded schools as well. And with that, we found out a lot of high schoolers actually gave up school so that they could work more and help fund household activities and help with the parents' financial status. So that trickled down immediately from what we learned in regards to that parent anxiety as well. And another big thing that we also learned was, since there was a lot more pressure put on parents with that switch to virtual learning, because their kids were home more. So the only, adult correction that they got was from their parents. And a big thing that we found out was, parents, of course, had added stress due to the pandemic. So when it came to academics, we found out that through student services interviews, that a lot of parents were asking kids, what are your grades? What is your status for school right now? Are these assignments turned in? Rather than making sure that their kids were actually learning material or just that they were okay. That was a huge thing that was brought to our attention, was when parents were trying to deal with the academics of their children, how they were handling and wording that, if that makes sense.
Right.
Did the kids feel micromanaged? Was that part of it?
In some households, it seemed that was the way, but it seemed like it was a major lack of structure that those high school adolescents definitely need. So not having to go to school at certain times, having relaxed deadlines. Another big factor was a lot of schools for spring semester of last year and fall semester of this past school year, a lot of classes gave pass-fail options. And so when it came around for this most recent spring semester of the school year, those were not, because we have been in the virtual environment for so long, those pass-fail options were not available to students. It was based on grades, and apparently students were just not expecting that. A lot of people said it was supposed to be another free pass for them. So that was also something, was like they thought that they had something to kind of fall back on with not putting in as much effort. And then when they realized that that wasn't the case, it kind of became into this over anxious mode that they had to switch into.
Right.
Wow. So changing rules and parents focusing on checking the boxes in schoolwork, maybe forgetting to check in with the child emotionally.
Right.
And some kids dropping out of school to supplement the household income. You got some really important data. Wow. This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's stuff that, I know I never even would have thought of or considered. Just learning some of those situations that kids are in, it's heartbreaking to know that they are put in positions or in situations where, some sacrifices have to be made. But it was definitely a major shock for me, I know. And Greenville is a lot different from the area that I'm from. It's a more rural area, and I'm from urban Raleigh Triangle area. So it was very different. So to kind of see, a place that's only an hour away, how different life can be for someone that was, almost the same age as me, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I think also it's really interesting. I really am grateful to our honors class, because that's something that they really stressed, was human-centered design, and not coming in with these pre misconceptions that you have of certain people in certain areas and things like that, but actually finding out what they need rather than what you think they need. So it was really eye-opening to see, you know, what all these people are going through and their different struggles, and that it's unique to the individual. And, you know, being able to tailor our solution to them rather than to what we think they need. So that was something I really learned over the semester or over the past year, that I think has been really beneficial in our project or in our project's development. Yeah.
That is a really huge takeaway, is determining what people actually need, because we always have this filter and we think we know what someone needs, but the data you got is very powerful, and I'm sure very eye-opening. And I see a note in our chat box from Sylvia. It's so challenging getting the teens to tell you what is happening with grades and assignments.
That's true.
And they're saying, no, we didn't have to do that, but sometimes the parents need to go to the teachers from the sounds of it. All right. Well, Nancy and Kasey, you both have been remarkable. We have plenty of time. Right now, we don't have questions in the list, so I'm going to make some of my general announcements. Virtual studio audience members, please get your questions typed in there if you'd like them answered. Please come back next week. It's the kickoff to Pride Month, June 3rd. And we've got a handful of state leaders talking about LGBTQ strides and struggles. Amazingly, it was just 6 years ago that the Supreme Court struck down state laws banning same-sex marriage. Awesome milestone there, but we've still got stigma, still a fact of life, and the FBI reports that hate crimes related to sexual and gender identity are on the rise. We'll be discussing all of that and more. Another general announcement, please fill out the survey that will magically appear when you close out of this Zoom session. It should appear on your screen, and it helps us keep our grant funding. Let us know how we did. It also helps us to improve over time. And I see the next question, can you please do your graduate work at Duke?
If they can give me some scholarship money, I'll consider it.
All right, that sounds fair. Is there anything that the two of you would like to add, a question I didn't ask, or just something you would like to say?
I would just like to thank everyone that did attend our session tonight. I really enjoyed getting to open up about our project and the experience we've had with developing it and learning about this wicked problem a lot more. It was an awesome opportunity. And I can also, if anyone would like, I can put my student email in if you have any further questions or would just like to chat with our team and get to know maybe some future updates. We are considering, the three of us that are moving on are considering trying to do a blog or some kind of update with our project and the strides that we're making. So if anyone is interested in that, you can always let me know.
And ditto to what Kasey said. Thank you guys so much for letting us come here and giving us a platform to talk about our project. That's not in, you know, a pitch where we're being scrutinized or being told to change something and getting feedback. We really appreciate just coming and talking to you guys. I will not be moving forward with the project, unfortunately, but I do plan on being, you know, pretty closely integrated with it still. And if you guys, you know, have any resources for us or things that you want to see implemented in AIDS for Anxiety, I'm sure we will, you know, take it into consideration. And, you know, we just want to grow our project. We want it to be the best that it can be, not just for us, but for all the high school students that we hope to help in the future. So thank you guys so much. And let us know if you have anything, you know, any suggestions or anything like that.
Wonderful. We sure will. And I'd love to have one or both of you back, whatever feels right, in a year, and we can have a little update conversation. I think that would be wonderful. And I think we're pretty much wrapping up our show. Again, thank you for your time, and just thank you for this uplifting session. It was wonderful to talk with you. When I had the interview with all 9 of you, I got off the phone and my coworker and I, Virginia, were like, oh my gosh, they are so awesome. That really gives me hope for the future. And I'm feeling that way even more strongly tonight. Well, we're going to wrap up for now, but we'll be touching base in the future, I'm sure. And everyone out there, please have a wonderful night. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you next week, I hope.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you guys so much.
Great job on your project and tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.